Hello, and welcome back. We've made it to Friday, and beautiful day here in Sydney this Friday morning. Look, I thought I'd just come out to my local park. You can see me there because of the light. Local park, and many years ago I photographed or shot a lot of weddings in this park, and it's actually set up for wedding photographers. It's really good. But another reason why I've come out today and to make this vlog is to give you some tips on how to improve your landscape photography. Now I'm going to go with 6 free tips that I think will improve your landscape photography. Now I know there's lots of YouTube videos out there that talk about this very subject, and they're all very good. They're really good. But there's a few subjects that not many people talk about when it comes to giving free tips pertaining to photography, especially landscape photography. So I'm going to go with 6 tips, and I think if you employ these tips, you'll find that your photography or your landscape photography would improve tenfold, really. And this comes on the back of years and years of experience. People that know me and follow this channel, they know that I've had a camera in my hand for over 40 years. And over that period of time, you learn a lot. But these tips that I want to give you come from when I hold workshops and with the questions that people ask and what I see them doing. So basically, yeah, as I said, if you want to employ these tips, feel free to do so. And at the end of this video, please put your comments down below and any questions, because some of the tips here are quite, well, at least 1 or 2 of them are quite contentious, but it has to be said. But what we'll do, we'll get started with the 6 free tips on how to improve your landscape photography. Okay, the first tip I want to give you is to slow down. We live in a fast-paced world, and it's no different with photography. I see photographers come to our workshops and they turn up, they've got all the bells and whistles, but they rush everything. And with landscape photography, you've got to immerse yourself into the environment. And the idea is to slow down. Slow down with your photography. Just slow down. If you do slow down, you'll find that it will increase your productivity in the way of quality of your images. So tip number 1 is to slow down and take your time. Take your time composing the subject, using the right settings, and basically enjoying the moment. But to slow down is hard for a lot of people, I understand that. And I think that if you adhere to this first tip of slowing down, you will find that your images will, or your photography will improve. There's no need to rush. You're not photographing birds in flight or cars racing around the track at 300 kilometres an hour. The subjects you're photographing in landscapes virtually don't move, besides waterfalls of course, but just slow down. That's one of the first tips I can give anybody. Just slow down and take your time. So that's tip number 1. Okay, tip number 2, and that's to get to know your subject. Now, when you go out into the landscape, if you go out just blindly, you don't know what to expect. So what I suggest is you do a bit of research on the area that you want to photograph, and really get to know that area, even if you have to go back quite a few times because the light wasn't right or you were struggling for composition. But each time you go back, study the area, study your subject. And in this case, the subject could be a waterfall, could be a seascape, could be a rock ledge, could be trees, woodlands, could be anything like that. But I suggest in tip number 2, study your subject, do some research on the area that you're going to, research the the area that you wish to photograph. If you're looking at other photographs of that particular area, try and concentrate on ones that are recently taken, because the landscape constantly changes, and it changes overnight. I've been to locations and they've been absolutely superb, and then I go back next week and there's logs and trees and a very chaotic scene compared to what it was 7 days ago. So really, if you're going to study your subject, look at images that have been taken recently, because if you look at older images, I can guarantee you what you'll see won't be what you've just seen in the older images. So try and do your research on newer or most recent images of the area you want to photograph, but get to know your subject, get to know it intimately, really. When you do know your subject, especially when it comes to landscape photography, you can really take some cracker shots and get the images or the composition that you've always wanted. So yeah, look, just study the area and get to know your subject. That's tip number 2. Tip number 3, and this is a very contentious one, and I'd like to say, don't fuss about your gear. Don't worry about what gear you've got or what gear you need to buy. Don't fuss about your gear, because that just slows you down in a bad way. Us photographers suffer from a syndrome called GAS, Gear Acquisition Syndrome, where we've got to have the best of everything. We've got to have the most modern cameras, the best lenses, the best filters, the best strobes, the flash units. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about your gear. Don't worry about the camera you're using. Just use the camera gear you've got, because over time I've seen people go out or ask the question, I need to buy a really expensive camera to take really good photos. Well, that's just a nonsense. That's not how photography works. I've seen it so many times that people spend so much money and yet their images are very ordinary, because they don't understand the principles of photography, which leads into another tip very shortly. So don't worry about the gear you've got. Now, that leads to things like editing or processing. If you're not into processing, or you sit in front of a computer every day and the last thing you want to do is go home and sit in front of a computer for 2 hours to edit photos, well then don't. But if you're in that, if you're that type of person, why do you need a $3,000 or $4,000 high megapixel camera? You don't really need that. If you are into editing, yes, you might need a camera that has a few more megapixels available to you. But if you don't like editing, shoot in JPEG. Simple as that. Don't bother about shooting in RAW. But if you want to advance your photography, well then yes, you shoot in RAW, and obviously you need to spend a little bit more money on your camera or camera body. So don't fuss about your gear. I see far too many people, as I said, worry about this subject for far too long, and it interrupts their photography, and in the end they either give up or they spend way too much money on equipment that they don't really need. So excuse the birds here, they're playing up today, the lads. But really, don't fuss about your gear. You don't need to worry about that. Sure, it's nice to have nice equipment, but in the end, you're going to decipher what you want out of your photography. People have said to me, yeah, but Glenn, you use pro bodies and pro equipment. I said, well, I do, because I make a living from these tools of trade, and that's what my gear, that's what I call my cameras. They're tools of trade. But yeah, look, really think about what you want to do with your images and with your photography in general. So that's tip number 3. Tip number 4 is keep your options open. When you go to a location, sometimes it doesn't work. You just can't find the right composition, or something happens on the way to the location. You might be held up with traffic, or something will go wrong, as it usually does. But have a plan B. Keep your options open, Now, if you get to a location and you're struggling for composition, just look around the area and keep your options open. Keep your eyes open for these different options that can happen in your chosen location. So keeping your options open, it gives you a far better chance to capture images you probably thought you weren't going to capture on the day, which is very exciting actually. But yeah, keep your options open, and it just makes the day more enjoyable, quite frankly. So keep your options open when you're going to your chosen location. Okay, for tip number 5 is concentrate on the light. If anything, photography for me is all about the light. I chase light. I've studied light over the years and what light does to our photography, how it impacts on our images and on the landscape that we photograph. Now, up until I studied light many years ago, my photography was just pretty normal, really, pretty average, and I thought that they were really good. But then a very wise teacher said to me, photography is drawing with light. And I thought about that and I thought, yeah, the old bloke's right, you know. Drawing with the light is what photography is all about. So I embarked on doing research on light and what light does to our environment and how it impacts on our photography. And once I understood the meaning of light and how light interacts with our landscape and our photography, I noticed that my images went from being sort of like okay to, I believe, quite good, to the point where I could sell those images and people wanted my services. And it come down to one thing: to be able to understand light, how to read light. Now, in photography, there's no bad light, just bad choices of composition to work with the light that you have. Now, people say, well, the best times to photograph are early morning, sunrise, late afternoon, sunset, golden hour, blue hour, and so forth. And that's true. That's true. I do a lot of that. But you can also take pretty good images in the middle of the day. It's what you do with the light and your composition. You need to match your composition to the available light. So there's no such thing as bad light, just bad choice of composition to work with the light that you currently have. So study light. Light is very important. If you can get your head or mind around how light works with our photography, I think you'll find that your images will just they'll increase in quality actually. So understand light, read the light and study it, and keep studying it, because with the right light and the right composition, it doesn't matter what camera equipment you use, you will obtain a very nice image. Okay, tip number 6 is inspiration. Throughout life, you especially photographers, we tend to run out of ideas, or we get sort of like in a hole, in a photography hole, which we struggle to get out of. But where do you find inspiration for your photography? Well, basically just leave the house. Get out and walk around your local area. Plan your journey. Read books. Look at other YouTube channels for inspiration. Get onto Google and Google areas that you'd like to photograph. You can find inspiration in plenty places and in plenty ways. So inspiration is very important with our photography. We need to keep the momentum going and just get out there. Just get out there and look at what nature has provided us. I'm in this beautiful man-made park here, but nature has taken over. And the inspiration here is absolutely fantastic. I mean, if I was a photographer that loved photographing flowers, well, this would be an ideal location. It's only 2 minutes from where I live. So there's plenty of inspiration around. Don't feel like you're running out of ideas, because on this planet Earth of ours, there's plenty of places you can photograph with great inspiration. So inspiration is very, very important. So keep your chin up, get out there, not necessarily with the camera, just get out and have a look around, walk around, and that way I think your inspiration will automatically come back to you, and you'll go out and take some fantastic images. Well, we're coming to the end of this 6 free tips on how to improve your landscape photography, and it's subjects that not many people talk about, but there's one extra free tip I'm going to give you, so it's actually 7 tips, and that is, what do you do with your images? Now, in the workshops that I conduct, I ask people, what do you do with your images? What do you do with them? And a lot of people say to me, oh, I just leave them on the computer, or I just leave them in a Lightroom catalogue. And yet they're using high-end equipment and $3,000 and $4,000 camera bodies, and which is fine if they want to do that. But what do they do with their images? What do you do with your images? What do? You go to all this trouble and all this expense of capturing some beautiful images, and yet nobody can see them. So leaving them in a catalogue in Lightroom, or just leave them in your computer, why would you be using high-end equipment if you're just going to do that with all your hard-earned work obtaining those images? For me, I print a lot of images, and my entire home, every wall in this house, or where I live, has an image from somewhere throughout the world. And I've made photo books, like photo albums, like what I call, you put in the middle of a coffee table, and but I'm showing the images to people that come into my home, or I can take them to photo shoots and people can look at the images that I take. I'm putting the images out there. So ask yourself the question, what do you do with your images, or what would you like to do with your images? Because if you're not blowing images up to frame or put on the wall, or put into a proper photo album, a printed proper photo album, well then you might as well just use your mobile phone to take photos, because you're wasting your money if you've got all this high-end gear and you're taking really good shots. And I've seen people in the workshops that I currently hold, they take some excellent shots. But when I say, so what are you going to do with that image? Oh, I don't know, I'll just leave it in the computer and I'll have a look at it every now and again. It's so sad. It's just a waste of time and money, actually. So think about what you want to do with your images. That's very, very important. Think about what you want to do with your images before you go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on equipment. If you've already spent that money on equipment, think about having your images printed, because when you go out onto location and you automatically know, well, this shot I want to print, I'm going to print it, I don't know, in an A3 size, and it's going to go in the lounge room above the lounge, or near the television, or in the family room. Automatically you'll make sure that that shot is superb. It will be flawless. So think about what you do with your images, or what you want to do with your images, before you actually spend that hard-earned money. So that's it. That's actually 7 tips. I'll put all this video together sometime today. Tomorrow, after all the rain we've had, I've searched out a location here in the mountains which I've never been to before. I believe it's pretty hard to get to, but that's what I like. It's a bit of a test, physical test, as well as a photographic test, but that'll be tomorrow, Saturday. So, but that's it for sniper photography. Thanks for watching. Yeah, look, I hope you can gain something from those tips. If you've got any comments or anything you want to know, please put it down below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please feel free to do so. I really much appreciate that. Just hit the subscribe button and the bell next door, so you don't miss anything when I post these videos. But that's it. So as I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, you keep smiling, keep shooting, and bye for now.